Hey everybody, how are you? Good, I hope. It is end of week 6, so you guys are fully engaged in week 7, which is the final week. So congratulations on that. Again, I'm working at home. Here's my mom coffee cup. In addition to finishing up this week's class, I'm also working on reviewing a self-study. I'm going to the University of Montreal at the end of September. So as part of an accreditor, I do some accreditation reviews, which is kind of fun. So it's interesting learning about the Canadian higher ed system, and it's different as you'd expect. So that's been interesting. Plus, the program's primary method of language is in French. So again, I know nothing about French other than French fry, which is one of my favorite foods. But but anyhow, so let me get going here on week 6. So I am not an ethicist. There are people whose training is in ethics. That's not me. I've worked with a number of them over the years to support curriculum and programs and such. I've had a couple on advisory boards. They're difficult to find. Oftentimes, ethics content is taught by lawyers, which, depending on your perspective, can be kind of humorous. But so, because I know a lot of lawyers that are very far from being ethical, but whatever. Anyhow, I've always kind of viewed myself as being fairly ethical. And I have to say that I've just been in this kind of probably 15 plus year journey of trying to understand ethics a bit more in the practice of leadership. So I decided just to pull this one particular chapter out and really try to emphasize this in all of the health administration programs that I've looked at. Ethics is largely grouped with law, so it's usually a law and ethics course. All of it has been addressing organizational ethics versus personal ethics. So if a program does address personal ethics, it's usually in some type of professionalism course or content. And again, I've seen very, very little of it. So anyhow, I think in today's climate or culture, we could say, I think ethics is important. I think since people have varying approaches to ethics, I think there's more and more opportunity for conflict of ethics. So therefore, I just wanted to emphasize it. So hopefully that'll help. But so the case study that you worked on with choosing a research assistant. So I chose this exercise largely because I have found myself in positions like this a lot. And so I thought you could probably relate to it. And I thought it's fairly benign-ish because it's a research assistant. It's not like a full-time faculty member. But anyhow, I just thought it was an interesting case. So I thought I'd assign that. Plus it's sometimes it's easier to have like an objective case to respond to instead of always having to dig inside of ourselves and such, which I know you do a lot for this class. But anyhow, so it's a very common dilemma. There's a couple things that I wanted to emphasize with this exercise and therefore emphasize for the entire class. But before I go too far, again, I just want to emphasize that with a teaching assistant in higher ed, at least, my response is going to be a bit out of line because usually TAs are hired by faculty members. It is not elevated to a director level position. So I think my response to this, and honestly, I think the author's response to it was a little bit kind of overdone, but we'll just use it as an example. So instead of thinking of it just as like a temporary TA, let's look at it as something bigger. So first off, as leaders and managers, I really support a lot of the perspectives shared in the book, especially is it Heifetz and Burns' perspectives. I think I've seen these perspectives in a lot of HR. I used to teach the HR class years ago, and in the field of compliance, I see these perspectives both referenced there, as well as in other ethical areas. So this Heifetz wrote that leaders should help followers confront conflict and address conflict by effective change. Leaders help followers deal with conflicting values that emerge in a rapidly changing work environment and social cultures. So as I just suggested, I think things are, at least to me, feeling more complex. And we're kind of navigating some areas that are just very complicated to understand. So as a leader or manager, what do you do about it? So in this framework, this is what I think Angie should have done. And the author's notes, so these cases, the teaching instructor materials that come with the book give me notes from the author as to how he would respond to this case. So I'm incorporating some of that into it too, though, as you would expect, because you know me a little bit better than you used to. I've taken it way farther. So first, Angie should have, at some point in time, not related to this hiring decision, but should have engaged the members of her team, her faculty, her department, the faculty and the staff in a values exercise. So there should have probably been some homework involved where she was asking each of the members to reflect on what they value, given the context of the work that they do. And, a potential opportunity to kind of uncover some biases that they might have held, or personal agendas that they might have also held. So in a process of trying to develop a organizational or a department level mission, vision, and values, she would have had them reflect on this before and then come together in some kind of a meeting, retreat, what have you, and try to have a discussion where they could identify what is the mission of their area, what is the vision for what they're trying to accomplish, and then what are the values that we're going to use to base our work. Those values would have been discussed probably at length, perhaps debated, and then should have been articulated somehow and used to support decisions moving forward on a variety of topics, including hiring decisions. In addition to that, and something that I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks, is the importance of establishing ground rules in department level meetings or organizational meetings. And that, again, is a separate conversation that usually the leader of the group would facilitate. You can bring in outside people if you want, but to really have a discussion about what type of behaviors are we going to allow and not allow when we interact with each other. And you come up with, typically a list. I used to put them on the top of every agenda. You can also put them up on the wall, what have you. And then you, as often as necessary, remind people of whatever these ground rules are. So examples are like don't interrupt, don't grandstand, everyone's limited to no more than 2-minute responses. what goes on in a meeting needs to stay in the meeting unless it becomes part of the minutes, blah, 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 blah. So once I was able to do that in a prior position and in my position here, it just helped kind of make conversations a little bit more productive. I'll just put it at that. Okay. So the second thing is that prior to announcing the open position, TA or faculty or admins or whatever, the department should have had a very clear discussion about what was needed for the position. So, obviously you would discuss competencies. I need the person has to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and usually this is reflected in the position description. But then in addition to that, you would want to pull in these values and say, in addition to that, we value these, and therefore we see that this position should support these values. So, and it could be that the values might be, they should never be, I guess, in conflict with the position description, but they might emphasize other areas. So, for example, this is just an example. So years ago, in my former position, all of the faculty for the program, we went through the values exercise, mission, vision, values. We identified all these values. We chose a value that of diversity. Now, we meant it beyond what most organizations, how they approach diversity. It wasn't just about ethnicity or religious background or race. It was, we value diverse perspectives, so more broad. So at the time, we needed to hire a new administrative assistant, and we knew as a team that we lacked in having anybody that had any detail orientation. We were all really big picture people, and as a result, we were running into some issues in that we just didn't have anybody who had a real skill in valuing detail. So we kept this in mind as we reviewed applications for the open position that we had. We were looking for somebody who had the skills that were reflected in the position description. But then in addition to that, we were really looking for somebody who had a real skill in why am I having a hard time remembering this? In detail. So we ended up selecting a woman who was very good at what she did, but from a personality perspective, about as opposite of me and other members of the team as you could get. So we ended up making an offer, and she accepted it, and I believe she's still there. And let me tell you, it was interesting learning to work with her because she didn't like to sit around and chit chat and laugh about stuff. She was really like all about business, getting things done. But so it took a bit of adjustment to get used to that. But I do believe that it did support a value of ours, that we appreciated differences and we didn't want all the like people at the table. We really wanted people of diverse perspectives. And so we would, invite her at various points in any conversation to give her perspective because she was very different than us. So in that case, I want to emphasize that many of you in your response to this exercise made a very logical decision. It was all about, the skills, knowledge, and competencies of this, of who the right TA was. And logic is a good way to make a decision, obviously. But when you really want to make a well-balanced decision, you need to use logics, and you also need to include ethical perspectives in everything you do. And that's where these values that you have and codes of conduct and all that kind of stuff come into the hiring decision. So it's not just the logical decision. You want to make sure that you are supporting what you value. So if we would say, well, we value diversity, but when we went to hire admin for our program, we only use logic, then we really aren't valuing anything. We're making a decision absent of our own values. So don't write down a value and don't and then later not use it to support decisions, because then it's just wallpaper. I mean, it's useless. So look at your organization's values. For those of you in leadership positions now, go through value exercises. You wouldn't believe how helpful they are in making and kind of navigating some of this difficult terrain. So anyhow, I hope that makes sense. It was a very conscious decision making process. This, I think it was like probably 3 or 4 years ago, but the outcome was quite impactful. So I also just wanted to touch on one thing that I don't think the author addressed, and this is a concept. It's big in higher education. I don't know if I've ever heard of it in the context of healthcare, but this concept of shared governance. So in higher ed, there's this concept called shared governance. I have a feeling it fits in healthcare too, but I just don't know. So in higher ed, the culture of higher ed says that senior leadership shares the governance of the organization with other pieces or other parts of the organization. So typically there's faculty organizations and there's staff organizations. And when senior leaders go to make decisions, they will consult with these two other organizations. So they are, in essence, sharing the leadership or the governance of the organization with these other key groups. And it's different organizations do it different ways. RIT is really pretty good at it as compared to where I came from, where it was wallpaper. That there was really, they said that it was shared governance, but it really, I didn't see a lot of evidence of it in my time there. But anyhow, so whether or not you see that in your area of healthcare or not, or for those of you who are not working in healthcare yet, shared governance does have, I think, some application, and I think we can see this a lot in a lot of the theories that we're learning about with regards to good leadership practice. But there's a lot of strength to it. It takes the knowledge, skills, and abilities of other groups, and especially when you're working with highly educated professionals, like why wouldn't you want to engage them in some of the decision making? Now, if it came to like financial decisions, you wouldn't go to a surgeon and say, what's your input on this financial decision? But you might get his position on things that his expertise supports. As far as like patient level care or, surgical practice or what have you. So it's engaging other people's in the decision making. So I have always been a big advocate of shared decision making. I call it more like collaborative leadership. So I've always had the fortunate in my jobs in higher ed to work with some really smart people. So I'm like, why would I make this decision in a vacuum by myself? Why wouldn't I involve them? The downsides of doing this, and I mean, trust me, it's been awesome. And I end up getting feedback and direction, and I think we make much, much better decisions than we would if it was just me, because my perspectives are limited to my education, my experience. The downside is that you have to be okay with conflict, because when you're inviting other people's perspectives, sometimes they're going to conflict with yours, and sometimes they're going to conflict with each other's, and you have to kind of go through a process of trying to arrive at some level of agreement or consensus. So you have to become better at dealing with conflict, and you have to allow more time for decisions to be made. So But if you can make the commitment to do that, I think the result has been incredible. So, anyhow, so keep these in mind. So the exercise discussion question 20 was on toxic leadership. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, I think most of what I've learned about leadership has been a result of processing my own experience working with toxic leaders. So, I have worked with some really good leaders. Unfortunately, I feel like I've had more bad ones than good ones. So, but instead of getting down or negative about it, I just try to approach it about like, what can I learn from these situations? So, in hindsight, and I think I shared this with a couple of you, I don't know where my brain was when I wrote the discussion questions for you to respond to. I think they weren't really very good. In the future, I changed those questions. In fact, I wrote those down someplace, but I can't. I'm like the queen of sticky notes, and I can't find my sticky notes. But it'll surface eventually. But I would spend more time on the discussion question on what do you do if you find yourself in one of these environments, or how would you advise a friend or colleague? I think a lot of us, and I could see it from the discussion posts, that a lot of us are finding ourselves in those situations. So I would like to just spend a tiny bit of time on this. First of all, I just want to remind us, remember week 1, we were talking about Johari's window. And again, I just want to keep pulling this back to that tool is useful in helping us understand relationships with others, as well as understanding how we can understand ourselves and really frame personal development. So remember, there's these 4 windows: open, hidden, blind, and unknown. And the goal is to grow the open by reducing the hidden, the blind, and the unknown. So once we can do that, once we can grow the open, or at least grow the hidden, so that we know, but maybe others don't know. Maybe this is something that you don't feel others should know. So to grow the open and the hidden requires us to deal with the blind and the unknown. And this is the equivalent of like looking in the scary dark closet by yourself. Or, sometimes it can be a bit concerning to address this. It's not easy to address these, and it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, you have to have courage and a willingness. And it takes a long time and a real commitment to do these, but the more that you're clear on who you are, what your values are, what your purpose is, what are you on this earth to do? What do you want your career to be about? What do you want to achieve for yourself, for your organization, for the communities that these organizations serve? What do you, on your tombstone, what do you want it to say? So the more you become clear about that, the more that can guide you in these difficult situations where you find yourself working for someone or a group of someones where you're just not syncing with them. So I've spent a lot of time in my career, probably a good part of the last 2 decades, spending a lot of time understanding myself from a personality perspective. I've learned to accept who I am, the good and the bad. I realize that as most of us, we're acquired tastes. I come across not so great to some people, really great to other people. I try to temper that so I don't, offend people. And that I can connect with more people than not. So, but I haven't really spent a lot of time on understanding purpose and really what I wanted my career to be about, which is rather pathetic at my age. But the last couple of years I have been engaged in this, and and it was quite timely. So let me just share quickly. And I know I kind of addressed this a little bit in some of the earlier videos, but I was at the same organization for 24 years. I had outstanding performance reviews for 23 years. I had raises every year. I had an advancing career. I went from being a staff person to a faculty position before earning my PhD, which is like somewhat unheard of. And then found myself in a director's position, all within the same organization, which again, you just don't usually see that. So I got I had a lot of opportunity to grow and develop at this employer. Um, and within about 2 months, the whole gig changed. The whole thing changed. I was working under the same dean leader, and but some of the other players changed. The culture of the organization had changed that impacted this leader, and I won't say that they're toxic. I do believe that there was good in them, but I can say that there was that this new culture that I was going to have to change to work within was in direct conflict to my own values and my own purpose. So I was faced with a really tough decision. And so it was like, do I stay or do I go? And I'm sharing this because I get a sense that quite a few of you are in a similar position. And so maybe my pain and suffering can help you. So I really sat and thought about, can I survive? Can I survive working there? I wasn't fired. My position would have been less complex. I would still be the director of the program. I could take less time doing the stuff I really don't like doing and spend more time doing the stuff I do like doing. I wouldn't have had to move my whole family. I wouldn't have had to do a lot of things that involved a lot of work. But I had to think, is this change good for me? Is it going to impact me in a positive way? Can I learn from it? What will I learn? Will this new position fulfill me or fulfill my purpose? Could I stay and not be influenced by this different culture? So could I stay and not let it change me and fundamentally change me into something that wasn't okay with me? So would it negatively impact me? In the long term, would it have impact on my future growth? So could I see myself growing into new positions or new areas? So it was a tough decision because the answers to some of those were, I would have to do less of what I don't like and more of what I do like. So there was some compelling evidence that it would have been okay to stay. But as I thought more and more about it, it would not have allowed me to grow in the areas that I wanted to. And therefore, I wouldn't fulfill my purpose and what I believe that I'm good at. So I looked into, well, what do I do if I want to go? So I've never applied for a position before this. I've never really formally interviewed for a position until 2 years ago. Most of the jobs I've gotten is because of who I know and people I've met. So it was really quite scary. On the other hand, it was like, if I don't go, it's not going to be the end of the world. So I just did it while I was still working on my own time, nights and weekends. I would fill out applications for positions and I submitted them. I really didn't know if I'd get any bites from them. So the process of applying was kind of invigorating because it provided some hope to me, and it really kind of reconnected me to my values and purpose again. And It gave me a lot of clarity in the documents I had to submit about like why would I leave and blah 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 blah, because I had thought through all of that, so I knew the answers to it. So I ended up applying for 3 jobs, and I got 2 interviews. Unfortunately, both of those were out of state, so it was going to require kind of a significant move. But again, when I went for the interviews, I was in a position of being able to be really clear about what I wanted, what I didn't want, because I didn't have to leave. So I could really just kind of be myself. So when I got the 2 offers from the 2 interviews, and because of all this work that I had been doing on understanding myself, understanding my values, understanding my purpose, the decision was really quite easy. As a result of that, I feel like I've made the right decision, and I so far all the measures are showing that I've probably done the right thing. I guess we'll see. So I haven't screwed up my kids too bad, and my dogs likes it here a lot. There's a lot more stuff to look out the window and freak out over. So anyhow, again, I know some of you might look at the exercises that we've done throughout this class as a bit fluffy, a little too introspective. But I just could not emphasize enough the importance of really understanding yourself, understanding how to grow yourself, and how that's done through feedback and shared processes to grow that open and hidden area, and to really invest in trying to understand purpose. And that those 2 things will really give you direction as you move forward in your career. So yeah, hope that's helpful. So the ACHE ethics toolkit exercise, I was really kind of pumped that most of you really enjoyed that exercise. If you don't know this, most professions, or I would say almost all professions, have codes of ethics, including ACHE. And when you agree to be a card-carrying member of, X, whether you're a licensed whatever or a member of a group, you are basically agreeing to follow those ethics. So you want to, similarly, organizations, especially, medium to larger organizations, will typically have codes of ethics or policies that address, or values, that'll address the expectation of your behavior. So you want to, again, don't treat it as wallpaper, but really pull those out and look at them. And every once in a while, just kind of do a little self-check on, man, I just completely forgot about this, or I've gotten kind of lazy in my approach to this. So, it happens to the best of us. There's no such thing as perfection. It's the pursuit. It's the pursuit of doing things right that drives us. So, anyhow, let's see. I hope this exercise again just kind of supported that knowing yourself and how to grow yourself. In the areas where you feel confident, you typically can be a little bit more bold in your leadership in those areas. And then as you discover kind of those red flags, those are ones where you kind of would retreat and think, what's going on here? And really kind of dig deep within yourself to try to figure out what's going on within me. Why am I responding or behaving this way? And can I change it, or is it just fundamentally who I am? And if it is, can I stay at this organization or stay in this profession, or is it time for me to move on? So, again, I did promote or share with most of you that I sent out the competencies that the faculty in this program and the advisory board that we worked on. We have 19 competencies, and we're working to implement a new curriculum that will be rolled out hopefully next year that is designed to support these 19 competencies. So I sent these out to the alumni of the program. There's 348 alumni in the HSA program. Did you know that? I didn't. That's quite a few. Anyhow, I asked them to I asked them a number of things about the competencies, but I asked them to share the level of importance of each competency on their career success and on their perception of career success in healthcare administration. The number one coming back, number one competency was professionalism and ethics, which I just have to say just shocked me to death. So I've never had anything like that. Yeah, typically it's finance and strategy and management leadership, various pieces of management leadership, but not specifically professionalism ethics. So again, I think this is something that, all of us need to probably invest in a little bit more. So in conclusion for the whole week, so I hope this week, again, reminds you that ignorance is not a defense. So just not knowing what ethics that you've agreed to abide by, not knowing them is not a defense. You need to really look at these documents, understand them, and agree to uphold those. So please try to find those for your specific professions and your organizations and be aware of them. Second, on a more personal level, if leadership is really where you want to go, to be a leader, in my opinion, and I think in all these materials that we're reading, means that you signed up for a lifelong commitment to growing your open and hidden areas. And to do that, you have to be able to go through a lot of dark and scary closets. You have to seek out, receive. So that means agree to receive and take seriously the feedback that you've been given, or feedback so that you can grow. And you have to learn to understand your own behaviors and your own triggers, and then work to change them. So two quick stories. One is a tiny bit humorous. So this last week I was shopping with my daughter at our local TJ Maxx. So I like TJ Maxx. So I've never shopped at TJ Maxx, but I've found myself shopping there a lot lately. I don't know. I think I just feel like I have more time to dig through racks of stuff, and I love a good bargain. So anyhow, we were at TJ Maxx last weekend, and this woman came in, and in full disclosure, going to tell you what was going on in my head for the purposes of trying to help you understand what was going on and how I responded to it. So at TJ Maxx, I'm looking at coats, winter coats. You wear winter coats a lot here. And I haven't got a new winter coat for a long time. So I'm like, I am buying myself a new winter coat. So I'm in the coats. This woman comes in. She's, I would say in her 30s, white, European descent, appeared to be mid to upper income level, had her daughter with her. I would say she was probably around 8 or so. And she was not really paying attention to her daughter. She was more concerned about herself, which was an issue for me. And before I got into higher ed, through college, high school, college, and then early career, I worked in retail. So I'm like kind of crazy when I shop because I worked in those jobs for a long time. And she was going around the store in the women's area, taking off all the stuff off the rack, trying it on, running to a mirror, looking at herself. Then she'd take it off and throw it over the rack. She wouldn't put it back on the hangers. Her daughter kept coming to her saying, Mom, what do you think about this, Mom? And kept asking her questions. And she kept kind of shooing her away, not giving her any attention, while what appeared to me that she was really involved in herself. And I'm looking at coats, and I become absolutely enraged with this woman. And she seemed to be following me around the store. And after a while, I realized that I was getting really upset with this woman. I don't know her. I don't know her name. I still don't know her name. I don't know if this story I concocted in my head about her was true, but I viewed her as this stay-at-home mom who has a husband who works his butt off, and they make lots of money, and she goes out and spends it and is really concerned about how beautiful she is. And she is more concerned about herself than her daughter. And before I knew it, I had this story in my head. I didn't know if any part of it was true, but I could feel myself biologically responding to it. It was really, really upsetting me. And I had my daughter with me, and she's like, "Mom, what the heck is wrong with you?" And I realized I was having something triggered in me, and I was freaking out over this. And as a result of that, I mean, I didn't say anything to her, thank goodness. But I realized that I have a very clear bias that I need to address. That it wasn't fair to this woman for me to make all of these assumptions. It wasn't fair of me to put this on her because of some known bias of my own against stay-at-home moms. So anyhow, there was a very clear biological response to this and psychological response, and I could feel myself getting very upset about it. So as a result of that, I've done a lot of thinking about it, and I need to really continue to work on this and understand where this is coming from, and maybe hire a psychologist to work with me over it. But anyhow, listen to your body and your mind and how it responds to issues and people and things, and pick up on these cues. As I've mentioned this book, Micro Resilience, that you might want to pick up sometime and read. There's a whole section in there about recognizing these triggers in yourself and working to recover from them more quickly instead of having your whole mind and body being hijacked from you because of them. So anyhow, so that's one quick story. The second one is that I did participate in a 360 evaluation. Here's my report. So I'll show you full disclosure. Here's my report. And as a result of this, I had, I think probably 20 people give me feedback on a number of areas, from relationship development, diversity, inclusion, what else? Yeah, but a bunch of areas. And then a couple weeks ago, I met with someone to go over these results. The good news is that most of it coming back was very positive, but there were a couple areas that I was marked low in. So on a 5-point scale, the lowest one coming in on was a 3.86. Most of them I was in like over 4s, but the ones that were like under 4s, I really took a look at. And to be honest, I look at these and I don't understand them. So I was talking to my coach about it, and I said, I don't even know what this means. I don't know what this means. And so she gave me an exercise to go back to the people that I asked to complete this, because it was anonymous, and then just share the results. Just say, I learned this good, this good, this good. But I was very curious about this feedback. Do you have any insight? Can you help me understand where is this coming from? Because I've looked at these reports, I've looked at the verbal or the written comments provided, and I don't get them. And I truly want to understand where this comment's coming from to see if it's something that is obviously in the blind spot or unknown or blind spot. And I want to, if I can, address it and bring it into the open area. So 360s are fun. They're brutal. I have to tell you, I was sweating bullets when I sat down to do this, because it was the first one that I've ever done here at RET with people that I didn't really know that well. So you always wonder how you're going to come across to them. And, anyhow. So the good news is I don't think I have to look for a new job, but I do have things to work on. So anyhow, I hope this has been insightful. Again, this is just my experience. So there's something to be said that if the pain and suffering, the learning, growing pains that I've been through, if I can use those to help you guys in any way, that would make it almost worth going through. So if I can help in any other way, please let me know. I'm always around. I'll be diving into self-study here in like 3 minutes as soon as I close this out. I believe we're down to 2 discussion boards, 1 Dropbox, I think, and the final weekly reflection. So don't forget to do that. I did look at the grade book yesterday, and I think I'm all caught up. So if there's anything that you want me to that I didn't look at that I should be looking at, or if there's any grade that you received that you're just like, I think she was on, out of her mind when she gave me this because it doesn't make sense, please bring that to my attention because, I make mistakes too. So let me know. Otherwise, I'm around all weekend, so let me know if there's anything that you need. Otherwise, early next week, I'll be finishing up the grading and posting the grades as soon as I can. I will post a final week 7 video. And so I'll leave my final goodbyes till then. So you guys have been a great group. Have had so much fun reading your stuff. I feel like I know you so well, even though I haven't had a lot of conversations with you. So anyhow, have a great week. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.